All right, welcome everybody to Dave Cooper Live, where we bring you the people, the products, and the process, enabling us all to build it better. And today, I couldn't be more pleased to introduce our guest, David Renggli, Deputy CEO at Renggli AG, representing the fifth generation of this family-owned business. Thanks to our gracious host, CEO North America, Etienne Gubler, and the Switzerland-based team at SIGA, we were able to tour high-performance job sites in advanced manufacturing facilities. And not only was meeting today's guest one of the highlights of the trip, so was the Swiss chocolate and coffee they shared at their impressive advanced manufacturing facility. So why does it take more than construction technology to build a century-old prefab timber system business? Leading the way in sustainable high-performance construction, how is Renggli leaving a space for what has not yet been created in preparing the next generation of construction leaders for continued success? Sustainable prefab timber construction is not a modern method of construction. It's been tested by time, but it is also working hard to make sure the future of construction looks good. We are only able to deliver these informative conversations thanks to our sponsors, Carson Holmquist and the team at Stream Logistics. They are experts in high-stake freight, and they are the perfect choice for projects with timelines and a specific delivery sequence, shipments with high complexity and unique constraints. The new methods of construction need new transportation solutions, and they are up for the challenge. Visit them at streamlogistics.com. And we couldn't do all this without our good friends at CombiLift. CombiLift is the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers. They are a leader in long load handling solutions, offering free warehouse and site optimization design services. CombiLift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. Reach out to Paul Short at combilift.com. And Brave Control Solutions, where offsite manufacturing systems that do more than just improve productivity. They have a unique approach to industrialized construction and a lineup of flexible automation systems specifically designed for the construction industry, empowered by CAD to Fab and turnkey solutions for 3D volumetric assembly, structural insulated panels, finished wall assemblies, MEP component processing, assembly, kitting, and storage. To find out more about them, please visit them at thinkbrave.com. All right, without further ado, I want to thank all those sponsors. Let's get into it with David Renggli. David, thank you for being on the show today.
Hi, Dave. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, well, the pleasure is all of ours, and I speak for everybody that watches this show. We had an awesome time visiting you with SIGA when we were visiting Switzerland, and your facility was absolutely amazing. The culture was absolutely amazing, and I think we're super excited to talk about the coffee and the sweets that we had, the chocolate. But first, David, we want to know everything about you. We want to know everything from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we will have one of your family members on the show. And we do know that they work with you, so they're going to know a lot about you. So be very careful. You better tell us everything, but you only have 2 minutes. Go for it.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is David. I grew up as the oldest of 3 brothers. The family home was actually on the factory grounds. So I grew up with the smell of sawn timber in my nose every morning. Eventually, I wanted to see some of the world, get away from Switzerland. So I did some high schooling in Canada, then went to university in business management, did some institutional real estate for professional transactions for investors. And after a few years, that smell of timber just wasn't there in that kind of business. So I answered the calling, went back to the family business. For the last 4 years, I was responsible for all our activities outside of Switzerland. And since 1st of October, I became Deputy CEO of Renggli AG here in the group home in Switzerland. So that's the short story here.
Well, you know what? I think, Deputy CEO, we even had to ask before the show. Why don't you explain to everybody what Deputy CEO means before we hop into your presentation?
Well, as you already pointed out, we're a family-run business. I'm representing the 5th generation, and we're currently right in the middle of the transition between the 4th generation, my father, who is still the CEO, at this firm, and he will hand over by the beginning of next year, probably in spring. So I took on this deputy role. So we work together hand in hand and have a bit of a handing over period, and then I will take the lead starting in spring next year.
Yeah, and as a family-run business, I mean, is it your immediate family, or do you also have cousins and uncles and aunts that work there as well?
We do have some cousins or uncles and aunts working here as well. We're around about 250 people today. And I think what's important is that in the top management and also on the board, we have a majority of external people that help us guide this firm. But my father, one of my brothers, and I were also on the management team nowadays.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, why don't we hop into your presentation? I want to learn more about the history of how this all started as well. So let's put it up on the screen. Go for it.
Fantastic. Thank you. We're actually 100 years old next year. We're going to celebrate the big anniversary. And the way it all started was in 1923, as you can see on the picture on the top left. We used to be a small sawmill and we did some carpentry work. But then when the fourth generation, my father's generation, took over in 1991, they really had to figure out the way to move the business into the future. And what they did is they decided to go into prefabrication, and they built the first industrialized factory in 1995, as you can see on the bottom left. At that time, we were basically aiming at single-family houses in the energy efficiency and sustainable market, all built in prefab timber panels. With time, though, we kind of wanted to challenge ourselves and go more into multi-story buildings. And we had to do a lot of our own work, build our own general contractor to be able to build our own references in timber. We started that business field in 2003. And with the bigger projects, there was also a need to enlarge our production facility. So around about 10 years ago, we more than doubled production capacity in order to be able to do the bigger projects that we're now doing. Meanwhile, we've also opened subsidiaries all over Switzerland, because you need to know Switzerland is a country with 4 languages. That means if your customer speaks French, you need to be able to deliver your entire project and entire process in that respective language. So we opened up shop in the French-speaking part, in the Italian-speaking part, and also in northeastern Switzerland. That is also German-speaking. Nonetheless, still producing out of one factory here, bottom right picture. And what we've done in recent years, we went over the borders, did some projects in Germany, and the news that had just gone out a few days ago, we're starting a new factory close to Berlin, which is running the brand Timpla by Renggli. It's a new brand for more volumetric buildings. So that's a great new strategic project that we're working on.
So let me get this straight. Switzerland has 4 different languages. So they have German, French, right?
Italian,
Italian.
And then there's Romansh.
What is it called?
Romansh. It's an old Latin language. Yeah, it's the smallest one. Yeah.
Wow. That adds a complexity to doing business, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And I mean, you have to imagine that like all the processes, let's say a shop floor drawing, needs to be in that respective language, or your architects will either speak Italian, French, or German, or English potentially. So you really need to have a team that is able to handle all of that, and they need to be seamlessly working together. And it is a challenge. It adds some complexity indeed.
For sure, for sure. So what are we looking at here?
We're looking at the map of Switzerland. You see the subsidiaries, and on the right side, the small map as a descaled version of Germany, with Berlin, where our new factory is going to be located. As you can see, we're nestled in Schütz and Sursee. This is the main hub. It's also where the production site is here in Switzerland. That's what the facility looks like. Production facility. I think what I'd like to point out here is that sustainability and economically or ecological buildings is like something that's deeply rooted in our DNA. And it has been for 30 years, in the beginning out of necessity to just differentiate ourselves to concrete buildings. But nowadays, also in multi-story, we really don't want to just talk the talk, but walk the walk. Therefore, you can see our production facility nestled amongst nature. We've got rivers, we've got retention areas, a lot of photovoltaic panels that covers almost 80% of the energy that we use for the factory. So we really try to set an example also with our own buildings here.
Yeah, for sure. And are we looking at solar power across all the roofs there on those, or at least on the larger buildings with the smaller building next to it?
Exactly, that's correct. So that covers most of the energy that we need. We also have a small hydropower plant. We cannot see it here; it's underground, but we really try to be as ecological as somehow possible with the project or with the factory. Basically, that leads to a more sustainable product, and it's really one of our aims in the whole process. Also, in our vision, we build for a more livable future, and it's something that's just super deeply rooted and something that is a motivation every day to really make a difference and you know, live up to the standards and
Yeah.
to what can be done today.
Yeah, you know, and the employees that you have and the culture, but not only that, the civilians and the people in Switzerland, you know, really truly believe in the sustainability and recycling much more than you see here in the United States, and it's really really impressive to see how clean and neat everything is in Switzerland.
Yeah, but I mean, also that it has been a process. You
Yeah.
need to set a good example, and then you can also come up with interesting solutions. Like for example, as you saw when you visited, we collect all the sawdust. We use it for heating, so we don't need any oil or gas to heat our premises. We even collect gypsum dust to recycle it. Same goes for plastic and so on. So we really try to optimize those processes, and not only because we should do it and because it's the right thing, because we also strongly believe that in the long run it's going to be an economical value if you have those processes under control and just reduce waste. So it's not just for being nice, it's also just
Yeah.
because it really makes sense from an economical point of view.
Great.
We do employ around about 250 collaborators in Switzerland today, and we cover all areas of construction. As we are our own GC, that means we do have our own architects. We invested big, and our fastest growing department is actually timber engineering. So we want to try to get into projects as early as possible and work together with architects to develop solutions, because I think the unique selling proposition that we can offer here is that we have the know-how from the engineering, from planning, but then also from producing and assembly. So we really try to bring all that experience, those 100 years, into the project at the earliest stages to come up with solutions that are perfect for the project and the customer. And as I said before, our vision, we build for a livable future. That's what is super deeply rooted. And to just give you some examples, what is it that we do? We started here, detached houses, but also small multifamily. Meanwhile, the volume happens here, where we build a lot of apartment buildings, especially for investors, for pension funds, for institutional investors. So this is the volume business. A lot of it is built to rent because it's a rather big market here in Switzerland. But also, for example, the top right picture is a condominium. So we can do basically all ranges from a qualitatively good standard for rentals all the way up to luxurious apartments. And last but not least, we do hospitals, we do sport halls, schools, offices, and whatnot, nursing homes, and all those kinds of things. So just to show you how big the range is that we're in. I think what's
Yeah.
important to mention here, every project that we build is an individual project. In terms of architecture, but also in terms of building system, like how exactly the wall looks, for example, how that panel, how many layers it has and whatnot, is always engineered according to the specific needs of a project. That's the only way for us to really find the optimal solutions.
Sure. All right.
Yeah, and I think maybe with this, yeah, we move over.
Yeah. So I think, you know, just to really clarify for everyone, one is, you know, and we'll talk about some of the business side of this in a second, but from a manufacturing standpoint, you're doing the mass timber structures. Yes.
That's
You're
correct.
doing
Yes.
you're doing the panel structures, which we were looking at as well, and you're also getting into volumetric or modular structures. Am I missing anything?
Well, there's some other areas, smaller ones like traditional carpentry. There is
Yeah.
flooring that we do and so on. But I think the volume is exactly, I think to be exact, I mean, the volume really comes from panels. And I'd like to be clear here while everyone is talking about mass timber, therefore CLT panels. We really believe that also timber is a very valuable resource, and therefore we build timber buildings. We want to build as many buildings as possible, but at the same time use as little wood as possible. Does that make sense? Like from a
Yeah.
sustainability point of view, I'd rather make 100 buildings with 20% of wood instead of 2 or 7 buildings with 100% thick wood walls. So we're in this. We're doing basically a stick frame prefab.
Sure. Sure. All right, listen, everybody. If you are joining us, we are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. So if you're not subscribed to us, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're not following Renggli and what they have going on, make sure you go and follow Renggli on all the social media channels. And if you're not connected with David Renggli, he wants to connect with you. Connect with David so you guys can all talk shop, do business around the world. We do have a global audience, and I will get to the comments and questions if there are any as we move forward here. So we appreciate you tuning in to have this conversation. So, all right, let's get the basics out of the way here, David. So you're doing the panels, you're doing the mass timber, you're doing the volumetric. Where is your client base? Where are you working at? Let's talk about your geography on where the builds are happening.
Right. So we have a strong focus in Switzerland because that's basically where we grew up, where the company was established. So we service the entire Swiss market from Geneva all the way to St. Gallen in all those segments I just shown before. What we're not doing so much anymore is really single family detached houses. We're more in the, like more multi-story timber buildings sector, I would say.
Right.
So we're focusing on that. With the new venture in Berlin, we're also going to be servicing the greater Berlin area, potentially all of Germany out of that factory in Berlin that's yet to be built. We're supposed to start construction around about the beginning of 2024. So right now we're actually building the teams, we're building the factory itself. So if anyone out there wants a super interesting job in the Berlin area, don't hesitate to reach out to us, to the Timpla team. Timpla.eu, you'll find us online. And also overseas, we've done some consulting. To be frank, we've decided for now we are not going to do building projects over in America or Canada because we really have only so much production capacity here in Switzerland and in Germany, and it's not so environmentally friendly to transport all the panels over to America. We have helped some bigger construction companies building up their own facilities, done some consulting. We're open to do something like that as well in the future.
Perfect. Let's talk about the market, right? Right now in the United States, build for rent, is kind of a hot thing. But the market in Switzerland's a little bit different on the custom home and rental side than it is here in the US. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
It's extremely fragmented. Like what we see here, I mean, we are a super small country in terms of size. We're covered with a lot of mountains, a lot of forests. So therefore, the buildable area is limited. There has been super restrictive laws in recent years that you can't just rezone farmland into construction property anymore. So what does that mean is that we have a lot of private owners on very small parcels. And we do have some bigger institutional investors that may have bought, 100 apartments in a specific spot 20, 30, 40 years ago. So a lot of our business comes from there when we obviously see the trend that of urbanization, of people getting older, wanting to have access to public transport, to hospitals and whatnot. So we're working a lot on projects like that, where maybe something old is torn down or it's even being renovated. It gets a new building envelope, and we add a story or two on top, where obviously a lightweight timber structure is much more efficient than doing it in concrete.
Sure.
And what's special here, I mean, tiny country, 42,000 square kilometers of land. We do have 26 cantons, which is the equivalent of your states, and within those we've got about 2,000 municipalities still. So like the villages
Right,
itself, and
right.
each and every single one has a bit of a different building code. So you really need to be able to customize your product and develop solutions for a specific piece of land in order
That's
to
right.
get the maximum value out of it.
So not only are you dealing with different building codes in the different cantons, but you're also dealing with 4 different languages on top of that. One of the things that stood out, David, is when you were talking about the new Templa factory that you're working on, and that breaking ground roughly or opening in 2024. Let's get into the advantages of bringing in design early and building the culture early. One of the things that really stood out about your company and several others that we've seen that are super successful is the culture. So talk to me a little bit about, one, how important is getting the design process nailed down before production in your market? And then let's talk about the process and the culture that has to be in place to even make that happen.
All right. If you don't mind, I'd like to turn those around because I think those are two incremental factors to our
Yeah.
business. I think like no great product can come out of a great firm if you don't have great people. And while I believe nowadays every single company is talking about how crazy good their culture is, I think here we really have something unique happening at Renggli, as we're a grown business, organically grown over the last 30 years, from about 10, 12 collaborators to the 250. We still have that strong family-run spirit in our business. And an example of that is, for example, when we saw the factory before, our entire production facility is covered in original wooden shingles. This is probably the most expensive facade material you could have on a factory. The way this came about was that my dad, at the time he turned 50, he talked about it. It was like, hey, my greatest wish would be to show to the outside also that our facility has some wood also on the facade. But it just was, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times more expensive than going with traditional facade material. So the way we solved this was actually a gift. Our employees came up with the idea that they gift their time to put up the facade. So the company bought the shingles that were about the same cost as a traditional facade already mounted up. And then everyone from the secretary to the president of the board, they took off half a day or a day of holidays, and they showed up to work and nail up shingles on those factory walls as a gift because they really wanted to, to show to the outside world what we're doing in this factory. And that's one example of great culture, and not just talking about it, but what it can lead to.
Yeah.
And I think people is like, seriously, it's our greatest asset. If we have the right people, they will come up with great ideas. They really care for the products, they care for the quality, they're proud to work in a firm like ours, and that just makes the biggest difference.
It does. And if you saw the size of this factory, it's a lot of shingles. And not only did they take off to do it, I remember you saying this, they actually took off to get some training as well to be able to know how to do it. And I have to tell you, there's very, very few places that you can see any waiver. They did a really nice job. And I know your dad was super proud about it.
Absolutely. And you know what the coolest thing is, like to this day, 10 years later, there's teams. Like if you have someone who has been with us for more than 10 years, they know exactly which corner, which line their team did. They're still proud. They're still mocking each other for the little imperfections here and there. And I think it's a phenomenal story. It was a phenomenal team building exercise. And we couldn't have blended better with consultants like that spirit that came from doing that task. It was phenomenal. And it's still very much alive today.
It
And
is.
that would lead me to your second question. I mean, you were asking about the design process. And I think what is imperative for what we're doing for prefabrication is that before we start any machine in the factory, we have built and developed a digital twin of the building. No matter whether that's a multifamily residential or whether that's a nursing home, there is going to be a full digital twin where we plan everything, not just the layouts or the statical works, but also to the level of where is your power plug going to be, where is your light switch going to be, because we need to know beforehand in order to make maximum use of prefabrication, make maximum use of the CNC machines, and really avoid all the correction work on site in a later stage. So essentially that means, just one more sentence, if I may.
Yeah.
It just essentially means we have to make the same amount of decisions. The architect, the client has to make the same amount of decisions as in a traditional project, but they do have to make it just a tiny little bit earlier, so we know before we hit the production button.
Well, that's where the efficiency comes from, and that's where the gains come from. So when you say you're doing digital twin, can you talk about the software that you use? Is it proprietary or is it Revit, BIM, off the shelf software?
Yeah, it's a lot of off-the-shelf software. Like, for example, we have to look at our clients, right? And the big part of our clients are actually architects. And whether that architect draws in ArchiCAD or he draws in Revit or whatnot, we have to be able to work with that model. So we in-house, we do use a lot of ArchiCAD to work on it. Might also be any other Autodesk, whatever platform, it all works. And then we basically have to do a translation into construction plans for the factory. There is a break. So we're doing a lot of patches basically that we develop ourselves, how we take the architectural model and translate it into the factory model. And then we use, again, traditional software like SEMA, like CADWork that are basically steering the machines. And then there's a lot of tricks and tweaks that we do to generate maximum value out of those models, whether that being a list of windows that you press a button, it goes straight to the manufacturer, whether that is the times that we basically take out of the model, how long it will take to run it through the factory and whatnot. And it's a long process. Way to go still. We're working on it to get maximum output out of it still.
Well, I want to just put this up real quick. That's the building that the employees were working on, yes?
That's exactly it, yes. One side of it is about half of the shingles you can see here.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about your branding a little bit here in a moment as well. We're going to go to a couple comments, but you can see the Renggli, the N's and the G's are kind of missing at the bottom, or are they? Is the question. But there's a reason and a purpose behind that. So why don't we say hello to a couple folks out there real quick, David? Are you okay with that?
Absolutely, yes.
Let's see who's out there joining us. Some of it I'm not going to be able to pronounce, but we'll try it. So we got Michael Bruce watching from Gulf Shore, Alabama, very interested in timber framing construction. Thanks for joining us, Michael. Hey, we got Nolan Brown. Hello there, Dave and Dave. Interesting topic about prefab today. Well, hello to you as well. Maybe you can say this word. Gilbert Meyer says, is it grazie here, Renggli?
Exactly. Grüezi, Herr Renggli. It's the Swiss hello, actually. Well done, Mr. Meyer.
Yeah, well done. When we were in Switzerland, I can't remember the name. I had to drink your native tea, I think it was. It's a hot tea. It was good. Right. I know he's going to put in the comments now. He said that. Hey, here's somebody else from Switzerland, Osama Alabi. Hey, Osama, good to see you. Grazie, Dave. Is it Grüezi or Grazie?
Grüezi.
Got it. And congratulations, David, on the new responsibilities. Wish you steady growth and continue innovation. So always good to hear from you, Osama. Thank you for tuning in. Here's a question from Wade Atterbury from Facebook. He's asking, are you considering hemp for insulation?
It's a very good question. Yes, we do. I mean, for the factory itself, it doesn't really make a difference what kind of insulations we put between the studs. I have to admit, though, the majority of insulation is rock wool for reasons of fire safety. But if we have, let's say, a single family detached house, it might as well be hemp, might as well be something like sheep's wool. We've done it all. We can do it all. Depends on the project. But fire safety really has to be considered.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that, Wade. Appreciate the question. Hey, there you go. You got Dave and Jen. Hope that David can find it efficient to ship to the U.S. and Canada. Greg Ugaldi is the head of the National Association of Home Builders. I have to tell everybody he's the guy that updates the president and secretary of housing 3 times a year on the housing market here. So, Greg, it's always great when you join us. And guess what, David? He's also a client because he's a developer. So you might want to figure out how you get your product to Connecticut. That's where he's at. He says quite impressive. Perfect.
Thank you so much for the feedback.
Yeah, Gregory, how you doing, Gregory? Good to see you. Thank you. All right, so here we are. Now we're in France. We got Henry Mickelberg. Switzerland is a particularly niche market with all those cantons, etc. However, the Swiss Menergie accreditation is not unlike a Swiss watch, probably the best accommodation in the world. It's regimented, transparent, and I can even complete the forms in French, which is handy as my German is limited to types of castles and non-ambulant penguins. I don't know.
Well, what he's talking about is a energy efficiency label that's called Minergie. It's been
Okay.
developed in Switzerland, I
Yeah.
would say almost 20 years ago. And it is still to this day a very important label here. It is not the only label that we use here, but it is a quite transparent one and quite clear, and has also like different levels, whether you want to go to more passive house or even energy plus houses as well is also one of the labels they have in there. A quality label, a good one. We use it a lot.
Here's the drink. It was Café Trash, right? Or Café Loose. That's what
exactly it.
Yeah. I had it. It was good. I have to tell you, it was good. I had it after dinner one night. All right, let's hop into some of the branding, and then I want to wrap up talking about Templa and the volumetric, just to have a better understanding when you do volumetric what the total is going to be. But first, let's talk about the Renggli brand and why you did it the way you did it.
All right, as you pointed out, when you look at our logo, we left space.
Yeah.
And that was the main intention. Like we want to create, or we want to show that we create space. And we have to take into consideration that we're not just building a building. We create homes, whether that's a rental or a condominium, but we create homes, we create space for people to live in, to spend the majority of their day, right? And to kind of open up and leave room for innovation, leave room to breathe was the intention that we also wanted to show in the logo.
So there's always room for growth, is basically what you're saying. There's room to breathe, there's room to grow, and there's always room so you can add more to it. So as you grow, will the logo get bigger?
No, we have to leave it the way it is. What we're talking about, of course, now you mentioned it with Templa. We also decided now to create a new brand that is really aimed at volumetric construction, because what we're seeing here in Switzerland is that this prefab panelized system works exceptionally well for us.
Yeah.
However, if we look at prefabrication and all the benefits of it, if you take it to the 2.0 level,
right,
the only way to go is basically if you, instead of creating a wall, you create an entire room in the factory, with the benefit that all the other trades that come in, whether that be the electrician or the plumber, they still also don't have to go to the building site anymore, but they will come to the factory. They work in warmth, in the dry weather, in a good climate, and they have all the tools handy. They have all the machines ready, and we can really streamline the process there as well. And that's the ambition that we have with Templa in the German market, basically.
So with that, will it be fully integrated? In other words, will the MEPs, the mechanical systems, the electrical systems be all completed within the modules?
Exactly. I mean, there's this, depending on the contract, there's obviously a clear cut. Like it might be that, let's say, the huge HVAC system that's in the cellar or on the roof is not part of our job, but then the fine distribution within the modules is something that we're really aiming to do in the factory to get maximum work done in the factory and minimal delays and hardship on building site.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. And is it going to be, obviously it's timber frame construction. What are you using? Can I ask for your sidewalls and your internal walls? Do you use gypsum?
We do use gypsum, but it will also really depend on the project. I mean, let's say we have a project where you want to see visible timber walls. Obviously, it would be maybe a 3-layer board or something like that. So we're super flexible in the system. But what is a given is that within the walls, we use traditional beams and studs, basically the equivalent of a frame.
Yeah. And the factory itself, how many units, or how do you do it by floors that you'll be able to produce in a day, a week there?
We're currently talking about 1,000 modules, volumetric units per shift per year. So we're aiming at a 2-shift operation. So around about 2,000 modules, which equals something like 1,000 apartments a year.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. We have a couple other comments that came in. Assam, I wanted to know, have you already used compacted earth with your products?
You have to help me a little bit on that. What is compacted earth?
Osama,
Like,
why don't you clarify your question, and I'll put it back up for you in just a moment. But I'm assuming compacted earth, as insulation, I would imagine, but I could be wrong. Maybe he's using it for panels.
Yeah, I think what I've seen before is that they use basically a certain type of like a earth or gravel type, and
Yeah,
you press it into walls. And I
that's
think
right.
it's a system that's super ecological and it works quite well. It's incredibly good on fire safety. However, it's not so easily combinable with what we're doing in the factory because there's a lot of manual labor to kind of produce these forms, these, like, let's say, overly large bricks. And then if we insert them in the factory and transport them on site, the elements, the panels just get really, really heavy. So it's a good system, but it's not something we use all the time.
Right. Osama, if that wasn't correct, just let us. Yeah, that's what he said. 4 walls there just popped up. So good to see you. All right. I knew it. I knew it. Tom Reddy says, hi, guys. Great to hear about the vast variety of building options. I think people are super excited about this. And I think they're super excited to hear from you, David. David, I think when we look at, what you're doing and what we talk about on this show all the time, right? In not only in the process with your current manufacturing facilities, but with the new Templa facilities, the advantages of bringing design in early, right? It underscores the point that all the decisions need to be made. You just get to ask the question sooner. You get to the answer sooner. And I think that's really what we need to take away from your success here is, you guys really are putting the time up front. You're putting the technology, the digital twin, and the culture of the people to make it all happen. So you can get the answer sooner, go on production, and actually get your projects done sooner for yourselves and for your clients.
That's exactly right. And I would just like to add one point to this.
Yeah.
Don't think like if you're out there as an architect, that doesn't mean that we're going to limit what you can think of. What we're trying to do is to help you make the product or the building manufacturable. So that means to give you technical solutions very early on how, like, let's say, how thick your floor needs to be in order to build what you envisioned. And that's really where we have some expert know-how, and it works phenomenally. If we can get into the project early, we'll also make sure that we have something that is manufacturable and cost efficient and essentially can be built on time and in budget.
On time and on budget, very key things, and especially when you get into the multifamily stuff. So last conversation, I almost left it out. I'm glad I did not. Swiss skills training and the deputy CEO role that you play are two examples of the importance of training and setting people up for success. Your skills training for the people that are on your team, how important is that? And can you tell us a little bit about how it's different where you're at than it is here?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked. I mean, we have quite a unique system here. We call it the dual system. So what that means is after you finish high school at 16 years old here in Switzerland, if you want to become a carpenter, it's not you get out of school and you just start working as a carpenter and eventually you'll be a master at it. No, you sign up with a company like ours, for example. We have around about 20 apprentices at the moment. And then you undergo a 3 to 4 year program where about 50% of your time you will be in school. It's a public school where you learn basic skills, but also a lot of stuff that is important for your trade. Let's say you're a carpenter, you really get into mathematics, for example, to make you fit also to do the work. And the rest of the time, you're working with our professionals, with our skilled labor on actual projects. So you can learn, you can grow, you can actually really get all the know-how on how things are done, how to operate the machines and whatnot. And you will get your diploma after the 3 or 4 years that certifies you as a skilled labor, as a carpenter. And from there on, with 18, 19 years old, you're really fit to work in the industry and you got a really profound understanding of the things that you're doing.
Yeah, and they can move on if they don't want to stay there or to other things as well. But that's just part of your process within Switzerland. Companies like yourself that take on these students to train and educate them to get them to that next level. Yes.
That's exactly right. And I mean, let's say a prime example of that is you do that and you are a certified carpenter, you still have all the options open to then
Yeah.
apply for University of Applied Sciences. You can still become a timber engineer and you can build on that. And we see the skill set that people learn on the job is so handy later on in their career. Like even I myself, even though I didn't learn a real job, I'm a business guy by trade. Even myself, I spent countless summers on sites to really learn how to build up prefab timber frame structures. And to this day, it's super beneficial because I feel like the client, or I understand what I'm talking about by having it done myself.
Yeah.
And you have to be on site. You can't just watch. You need to get down and get your hands dirty.
Well, that's really what it's about, and that's how most tradespeople learn. But I will tell you from visiting some of the trade schools, there's a lot of math, there's a lot of schoolwork, so it's just not all hands on. It's really a tough program, but they come out as highly respected and very skilled trades, and their incomes are show for that as well.
Exactly. Yes.
Perfect. David, did I not cover everything? Is there anything that I missed? Is there anything you would like everybody to know? Is there one thing that you just love to share that I didn't cover?
No, I think we covered a lot of things. I'd like to point out that you'll find us online at www.renggli.swiss, renggli.swiss. You'll find us online. You can follow us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, all other social media channels like Instagram and whatnot. Be great if you reached out. If you're ever in Switzerland, don't hesitate to get in touch. And I hope with one or another viewer that we can actually do a project eventually. So reach out.
Yeah, definitely. I already know some of the people that are on here will probably do that. They work just like yourself in the same area and all over the world. So David, thank you so much for joining us today. We will put in the comments how to get a hold of you as well as the website. So that's awesome. And again, hey, if you're looking for a job and you want to move to Germany, Templa is hiring. They're looking for some really qualified people to come in and help them run that new manufacturing operation that's happening. And you said 2024, but you're hiring now to get them all trained, right?
That's exactly right. So we want to start operations in 2024. We broke ground just about 3 weeks ago. So yeah, we're ready. The management team is already up there and running. We're still looking for some skilled contributors. You wouldn't be the first one that moved back from the States or from Canada back to Germany in our team. So yeah, if you're interested, feel free to reach out. We have some really interesting opportunities out there.
I love it. I love it. So we're bringing you the brightest people in the world, doing the best in the world. And not only that, now we're bringing you job opportunities as well. So super cool. David, thank you for joining us. And for the rest of you, make sure you tune in this Wednesday. AO Architects is going to be on. Nick Gomez. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great conversation. We're going to continue driving this business forward of offsite construction, modern methods of construction, panelized construction, mass timber, whatever you want to call it. We are going to bring you the people that are building it better. So stay tuned. We'll see you this Wednesday. David, do not go anywhere. We'll come right back to you after the outro. And thank you again to Siga Swiss America for allowing us to come over there and see you and the entire team at Siga in Switzerland. I wouldn't have known David without them. So David, thank you. We'll see all of you next time. David, stay tight. Bye now.
Thank you so much.